You ever open up a bag of chips and just said to yourself, I'll just eat a few. And then the next thing you know, you got crumbs and regret covering you from head to toe. And look, that's not from a lack of willpower. It's science. And your snacks are designed to keep you munching. From the texture to the sound to the salt to fat ratio, food scientists are out there playing us like a fiddle. And we don't even realize how much of our daily behavior, our energy, and even our thinking is shaped by what we eat. And that's the real distraction. Not just bad health, but we get bad focus, bad moods, and a culture of consumption is dressed up like convenience. So today we're going to talk about what it is that you eat and what kind of foods you put in your food hole. From Whole Foods? This is Society Breakdown. Peace, and blessings. What's good? This is your boy Seven Inglewood Zone right now in your zone, and this is another episode of the Blackman Show Presents Society Breakdown. And today we are tackling three big questions about what kind of junk you putting in your face. And they are: why are we addicted to food, and who made it that way? How does the modern food system keep us distracted and sick? And what we can do to eat better without going broke or losing time. Here's a hint. You're going to have to not be lazy. Sorry. So first up, why are we addicted to junk food, right? I'd say, well, first of all, we are engineered to be so, right? Food companies hire craveability consultants to design snacks that override our satiety. And I had to look this up to see even what satiety is, but satiety is the feeling or notion of your body being sated. And generally that happens as a result of some sort of interactions that have triggered your this dopamine or neurotransmitter response. And what that does is, like, once you get the thing that makes you feel good, you feel happy, you feel like, yes, I've achieved a thing, or finally a thing is taking place and I am good after it. Now I can relax from whatever that thing is. Generally it's from salt and sugar, or hell, we've heard about it a lot. You get that same thing from being on TikTok, seeing that one video that you like, interacting with it, however it goes, things like that all trigger that satiety or that dopamine response. And when it comes to junk foods, they are specifically looking for what's called a bliss point, or that perfect ratio of fat, sugar, and salt, which helps to stimulate a dopamine response. And when I think of that, McDonald's comes to mind specifically because I saw a report some time ago that talked about how much sugar they put in their salads, how much sugar is used in their French fries. And I'm like, there's sugar in the fries? Never would have thought that. And so something else that comes to mind when I think of that is Jay's potato chips and Lay's potato chips also, because, well, so if you're a kid of the 80s like me, back in the day, they both had commercials that, and catchphrases or mottos or whatever, that sounded very much the same. Like Jay says, can't stop eating those Jays. Can't stop eating those Jays. And Lay's would say, you can't eat just one. And they're both right, because they're both are scientifically engineered products that are made for you to continue to eat these empty calories that keeps you sated, but gives you no real nutritional value, so that way you keep going back for more. So I have this friend who is going through their own weight loss journey currently, and I just happened to come across this video not too long ago that speaks to exactly that. Y'all let me know what y'all think.
Food makers have learned that if they take the fiber and protein out of products, the products lose their satiety. They become empty calories, where we will eat and eat and eat and never get full. Now I'm going to show you how to flip this around and use it to your advantage so that it's a weight loss hack. All foods are made up of one or more of these things: protein, fiber, sugar, and fat. Protein and fiber fill us up. They're very satiating. They cause us to eat less. Whereas sugar and fat, especially when they're together, cause us to eat more. So the key is to eat for satiety instead of to satiety.
And another reason that we're addicted is because of manipulation. We're being neurologically manipulated, right? We got ultra processed foods that actually hijack the brain's reward system. And these are the same neural pathways that's been found to be triggered by drugs. So yeah, so when people say that sugar is just as addictive as heroin or cocaine, it's true. Now, I mean, I've never seen anybody fiending for sugar, and maybe because it's so prevalent. So maybe if it wasn't as prevalent, maybe people would. But I've never seen anybody offer to get on their knees for, you know what? Let's just keep on going. Yeah, so then you get fast food and junk food, chips, soda, whatever, all kinds of stuff like that that gives you this quick dopamine hit, which is followed by a crash. And I, for one, definitely know that because whenever I'm taking a road trip or doing a road trip, I like to indulge in my own little guilty pleasure, which is a bag, just a one bag, not the big bag, but still a bag of spicy nacho Doritos and some cherry sours. I gotta have my salt and my sugar, and I gotta have them at the same time. Not at the same time, but have the chips, eat that, cool. Now I have some sugar, eat that, good. And I just kind of alternate between the two. So I do that, and I have that, and it feels so great while I'm eating it. And then as soon as I'm done with it, I have this lull of a feeling. It's kind of like, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a crash, as many people talk about, but it definitely isn't the high that I was feeling when I was engaging in eating that stuff, And then we've got early conditioning, right? Kids are being marketed to as young as 2 years old with junk food. And look, prime example, I was just in a store yesterday with my 2-year-old out there filling his prescription for whatever he needed, getting his prescription filled, and then we're going through the checkout lane, and as we're coming through the checkout lane, there happens to be some candy. My child does not eat candy, has never had candy in his face ever, doesn't even know what it tastes like. Well, that's not true. I guess he had a piece of chocolate once. So, but not like just plain sugar. He's not had that. And here it is, like a display with like all these colors, and look at this, and a little toy looking thing. He's just like, whatever that is, I want that. And his eyes were completely fixated. And he just kept saying and motioning towards this thing like, yeah, I want that thing. And it's no different from what we used to get as kids when we would see the bright packaging and the mascots, Tony the Tiger, Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs guy, Lucky Charms character, like all these different foods and things that we had. Happy Meals. Who doesn't remember Happy Meals back in the day? When we were shorties, Happy Meals was the thing. Don't even get it to us. I know Happy Meals ain't what they used to be, and that's probably a good thing, honestly. But when we were shorties, Happy Meals was popping, and you was that dude if you could get a Happy Meal and a couple McDonald's gift certificates for your birthday. Oh, you was living. Now, I never was the recipient of the Happy Meal gift certificate birthday party. I never had that combination. I did have all of those things, but never at the same time. So maybe I'm still hating a little bit. Maybe I'm a little jaded. Oh no, I'm sorry. But yeah, these foods are packaged and marketed to such a degree that the kids feel like they have to have it. And so then they bug their parents, and the parents want to keep the kids quiet. Hey, shut the kids up. Yeah, take it. Here, fine, I'll go get the thing. Here, take it. There you go. We don't have parents nowadays that are the Eddie Murphy parents that say, I'll make you something better than McDonald's. We don't have those parents anymore. I won't say we don't have them. They're not as prevalent as they were back in the day. So that joke, if Eddie Murphy were to make that joke today, I don't think it would land nearly as well as it did back in the 80s. So how does the food system keep us distracted and sick? Well, first off, I will say, as I kind of alluded already, is we have this time-starved convenience culture where we want to do everything in convenience. I've talked about this in other shows already, where we want to be mad about something, we want to protest, but we want to do it on Saturday. We want to do it on Saturday, not on Sunday when the football game is on, not during the week, Monday through Friday, because we got to work. So we'll do it on Saturday, and that's the day. That's our protest day. It's like, that's what we'll do for that, and so that just kind of goes to the fact that we want to be comfortable while we also kind of a little bit want to show our our activism or show how we feel about a certain thing. And that's no different when it comes to cooking. I mean, Americans now spend less than 30 minutes a day cooking. And look, I know many stay-at-home parents who take care of their children from the time they get up to the time they go down, and the parents are cooking breakfast, hanging out with the kids and playing, and taking at least 20, 30 minutes just for breakfast. And so they're probably taking another hour to maybe even an hour and a half to do dinner. I physically know these people. So that means even in light of people like this, on average, Americans are spending less than 30 minutes a day cooking. And while that's going on, fast food is every damn where. Real food takes real time to cook. You need prep. You need time. You need knowledge. You need to know how to do these things. So for all those men who are talking about, talking to women and saying, what do you bring to the table? And ladies talking about, I am the table. Blah, blah, blah. If you can't cook, which is the thing the man wants most to be brought to the table, then you are not qualified. I'm sorry. I know it's probably going to start some problems, start some issues out there with some people out there. But seriously, a lot of y'all don't know how to cook. And even if you know how to cook, that's fine. That means you know how to follow instructions. How much cooking can you do straight from here without saying, let me Google it first, or let me look it up first. Let me try out this. Yeah, that's fine. New recipes, I get that. But just, do you have any, these are my go-tos. I can pick this up. I can go to it. I don't even have to think about it. I can make this thing. That's what is missing nowadays, I think, in the grand scheme of society right now. Like, we don't have a lot of people who are actually going to cook a meal straight from their brain and put it on a plate and it's good without them saying, whoa, I studied at this institute and this culinary this and that. Like, yeah, I get it. You went to Cordon Bleu and you wild out with it. But not everybody got that, and you don't need all that. All you need is a mama who gives a shit and maybe a big mama in the house in case mama ain't on business. But another way that we're kept distracted and sick is through food deserts and food swamps, right? Many urban areas and rural areas lack access to fresh groceries. But again, you got Burger King, Dollar General, and liquor stores on every corner, if not every other corner. And that can lead to health impacts. And then that kind of reveals who profits from it, right? You got chronic disease rates that are going up, from diabetes to obesity and heart disease. I would be remiss if I didn't think that there were, everybody who's watching this doesn't have at least one relative or just know somebody who's suffering from one of those three. I can almost guarantee that everybody knows somebody who's either got diabetes, they fat, or they got heart disease. And maybe you don't know the heart disease part as much, but if they fat and got diabetes, there's the possibility that they're on their way to the third, And that's because of medical and pharmaceutical companies and the industry as a whole basically profiting from poor nutrition. And look, there was a salient point made by one Lupe Wazalu Fiasco Muhammad, who has a song, What Would Jesus Do? He'd probably laugh out loud like, what the fuck? Actually, there's WWJD. He'd probably LOL like WTF. That's actually the name of it. But you get it. But in that song, he says, I give McDonald's a little help here. I think they should expand into healthcare. And then you'll have all ends covered, even make caskets. Have it all umbrellaed. And to me, that makes a very salient point. Hospitals are filled nowadays with people who are always sick. And at the same time, drugs are flying off the shelf by Big Pharma, selling you something that's going to cure you from whatever it is that you're ailing from, which generally, in most cases, or in a lot of cases, I won't say most, in a lot of cases, is the result of bad diet. Like, if you fix your diet, I promise you'll fix a lot of other things in your life. But that will stop the politicians who benefit the most from receiving heavy lobbying dollars from these processed food corporations. So if you think about it, it's kind of like a cycle, right? We got the politicians who are lobbying for the corporations to make bad food that the people eat that leads to them going to the doctor, that allows the politicians to do more regulations, that allows corporations to, like, it just becomes a cycle. And you get stuck in that if you decide to make those choices. And when you make those choices, you could end up with mental fog and energy drain. And when you put them together, that is a distraction tool for your ass. You get poor food that equals a poor focus. They would talk all the time about how kids weren't able to focus in the hood when they get to school in the morning because a lot of them didn't eat before they got there. And when you are poorly focused, you are easier to manipulate and easier to distract. Hey, look at this TikTok. Hey, look at this. Hey, want to buy this? Like, they do that all day long. And what do we do all day long? We fight each other online, but we barely fight the systems that are poisoning us, that are literally, hell, some of them probably got it in their own manifesto, in their motto, in their company credo or something like that. I'm just saying, like, there are companies that are out there literally meaning us harm. Companies like Hershey's saying that water isn't even a human right, making me think that what Jadakiss said about putting air in a bag and charging N-words to breathe may be something for real that will happen in the future. Who knows? But yeah, we fight each other online more than we'll fight the people who are trying to come after us. And if you look at social media, and I don't know if it'll be people who actually use it, or maybe the better of us, or maybe the next generation of social media users will be able to look at it from look at social media as a whole from a different perspective and say, wow, this is kind of like a microcosm of how people interact anyway. Like, we'll argue with people like regular people. I'll argue with you, but I won't argue with Tesla or Amazon or something like that. Like, I won't say much about them or to them or Target or something like that. But I'll argue with you because you're right here. And the same thing happens, like, if there was no social media and we were just sitting in our homes looking at each other, eventually we'll find something to argue with each other about before we argue with the person who's outside. And it's just weird. Like, the person we're most familiar with, that's the person we give the most grief to. Really crappy when you think about it. But with that, how do we break free from the cycle and do so without going broke? I'd say, first of all, you got to know the tricks. You got to know the tricks, and you have to be more discerning when you're going down the shopping aisles when you're at the store. Like, personally, I rarely am going up and down the aisles unless I'm looking for canned goods or seasonings. That's generally all you'll see me getting. And there might be some one-offs here and there. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but generally, like, if I'm shopping, I'm going up and down the aisles for canned goods, spices, or the frozen food section. That's probably the only the main three areas you'll see me hitting on when I'm going up and down the aisles. I'm primarily in the grocery store for produce and the meat. That's it. And so yeah, produce is generally on the side, and then the meat generally is in the back because people don't want you. Grocery stores don't want you coming in, grabbing meat and leaving. So they figure put it way in the back, though it's hard to get to. Just like if you go to Best Buy, all the expensive electronics is way in the back. Think about it. And so even if you are shopping and you find yourself in those aisles or whatever, be discerning when you are reading the labels. Read the labels and then be discerning when doing so. For example, if whatever the thing is that you're buying has more than 5 to 10 ingredients and you can't pronounce more than 2 of them, get on about it. Now, you may also have a very bad vocabulary and the inability to communicate well, so you may need to work on that. But if that's not the case, and you can read at a 12th grade level, yeah, and it's still words you can't pronounce, you might want to reconsider buying those things. And on top of that, avoid low-fat and low-carb marketing, because that's usually just a chemical swamp. I remember when I was dating this young lady who was a chemist, and she would always tell me not to get things that are low-fat and low-sugar because she says, well, you're still getting the same amount, and now it's low-fat. She says, well, they had to feel that if they take the fat out, let's just say you had a 8-ounce container or whatever it is of something, and they take all the fat out of it, or they say it's no fat. She says, well, they have to replace that with something. They have to replace the fat that they took out with something maybe a binder agent of some sort to keep everything together or whatever, because sometimes the fat helps to make whatever the product is the product, like with butter. So she says that when you're doing that and you're taking that thing out, well, you're ruining, or not ruining, but you're changing its makeup. And so now it's not really the thing that it was, it's a new thing. And that's why they have to call it low carb, low sugar, low fat, whatever. But yeah, I still think about that and practice that to this day. I don't think there's anything in my house that's low fat, low sugar, or low carb. I think when we go for, and none of us are overweight. Let me say that. None of us are overweight. And so if we get something like Greek yogurt or whatever, like, yeah, we're going to get the full fat kind because some of those fats are actually good for you. Like if you're eating way more than you're working, and you know, guys who work, people who work, I think you understand, like work versus not working. I think you understand what that is. But if you're eating way more than you're working, then yeah, working off, then yeah, eventually you're gonna be fat. That's just gonna happen. And that's outside of the biological issues and all the things that people go through in their normal daily walks and however that looks for them. I'm just speaking in general. Yeah, you're gonna be fat if you have a sedentary lifestyle, if you eat some of these low carb and low fat items to excess, especially if you think, well, because it has low fat, that means I can eat more of it. That's not the case either. All of those things are gonna lead to you being overweight. But something else that we could do to make sure that we are not being taken and that we are in more control of our habits is to cook simple. You ain't gotta be fancy with it. You ain't gotta be fancy. Look, get you some frozen vegetables, get you some rice, learn what seasonings are, and that alone is gonna be about a third of the cost of takeout. Get you some, one of my first real go-to meal that I was happy that I could say I could make myself. My brother showed me how to make it. It would be rice, the California mixed vegetables, and some seasoning with some Eckrich sausage or some sort of sausage. So we cut that up, put that in there, and we season. And now that I think about it, we didn't even have the rice back then to kind of stretch it out more. So that was probably even better because the rice, is kind of a starch, and so we didn't have the starches. But but now the way I eat it is just like, that's a stir fry. Take that and slap that on some rice. You in there. You are winning. You are winning. Many dates I've had, shout out to all y'all who've had that meal from me, but many dates I've had, that was one of the first things I cooked because they were like, can you cook? Yeah, I can cook. Let me show you. Bam, bam. Ooh, this is nice. I know, because I made it and it's always better when you make it yourself. I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent. I know I can run my mouth. But another thing that you can do is to meal prep. At least once a week. If the time is tight, just prepare your meals beforehand. At least lunch. At least do your lunch. Because a lot of times people don't. They rush out for the house, rush out for work, grab a bagel, grab their coffee, and they out the door. And so they don't put a lot of thought into what it is they're actually putting into their food hole while they're en route to work and all that stuff. They just know I need a little bit of energy, a little bit of pick me up. I'll get something for lunch. Lunch comes and then they're like, oh crap, I didn't bring anything. Now you're spending money to go get some salt, sugar, and fat put into your body that you probably could do a whole lot better at if you were to make your own lunch. So I'm just saying, there are ways that you can do this if you are not lazy. Or I'll say if you take the time to do so, right? You can also eat local and budget. And because to me, that's a smart strategy. You go to your farmers markets. They always have nice deals. The ones out here, they're dope. Shout out to the Eastern Market in Detroit. They have some nice stuff out there. I wish I could have brought some of that back. But go to your farmers markets. They generally have a lot of produce at good prices. So check those out. But yeah, farmers markets and co-ops, yeah, check those out because that's where a lot of savings are there for you. And not only are you saving money, but you're saving yourself. You're saving your health. Make yourself the best person and the best version of that person that you could possibly be. Why focus or why try to make yourself look a certain way when you can actually be a certain way? Ooh, that's bars right there. If you heard that for real, you know what I'm talking about. Reduce the junk. That's another thing you can do. So without even changing your habits or going out and buying new things, reduce the things that you do purchase. So that way you're not buying. So if you buy a bag of chips every week or every day when you go to work or have something for lunch because you think, oh, it's cheap, it's only 75 cents, or I think it's $1.25 now. But yeah, it's only $1.25. I'm getting a bag of chips, and they had a slice of pizza and a pop, and that only cost me $4. You think, well, that's a good lunch. But is it though? but is it though? Especially if you got the salt and sugar. I mean, that was your meal right there. Where were the vegetables? Where was the produce? Where was anything in there? I guess you had a little tomato sauce, some processed tomato paste that was put on there. You go call that your vegetables. Quit playing. It's fruit anyway. All that to say that real change is gradual. That's generally how I take it. It's not overnight. It's not go to bed tonight, wake up tomorrow, and you're Superman. It's not gonna happen, especially not for you, James. I'm just saying. And there are also other platforms, other creators out there. Some of the people that I follow, I can put them down in the description so you can check those out. And organizations that promote real food literacy and urban gardening and food justice, so that way we don't have food deserts and food swamps. We've got tons of them out here in Kansas City, and I can name several in Chicago that I've driven by and lived in and or near. So I know that they exist. I know that that's a problem. I know that there are tons of people out there who are suffering from the very things that I had to go through with not having a grocery store immediately available right next door, right within my community, and or the community grocery store being bought out or sold because they aren't able to keep up with the national grocers who, even though they have better prices and have beaten out the little man, they're still nowhere near my neighborhood. How long it took Chicago to get a Walmart? So some of the takeaways we have today is we're not just eating bad food. We are being eaten. We're being eaten by a bad system. Food is your fuel, but it's also how we show up. It's in our bodies. It's in our work and in our resistance. We can't just be weekend warriors when it comes to food and the things that we believe in. Now, again, you don't have to be perfect with this. You just have to be intentional, right? Be intentional with what you eat, with what you feed yourself, with what you feed your children, with what you feed your families, your communities, if you have that ability. But what I want to leave you with is a quick question, right? A couple questions, but I'll say that you are what you eat, right? You are what you eat, but more importantly, you become what they feed you. So who is feeding you and why? And down in those comments, if you could let me know, what is one food that you know is bad for you, but you still crave? Drop that down in those comments, because if you are a spicy nacho Dorito lover like me, you are my people. I found my tribe. and lastly, what's one thing that you've done to reclaim your health or cooking habits? But that is it for today. Y'all be safe out there, and as always, take care of each other, because they are not going to. This has been your boy 7. Peace. And I'm out.